The night air over Accra was warm and full of music as Ama Kusi stepped onto the rooftop of the Skyview Hotel. String lights glowed above the crowd, and laughter drifted across the city. This was her big night, the company's annual mixer, and word had spread that she was being considered for a major promotion. She'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, and even her usually stern boss, Mrs. Efua Adebayo, had given her an approving nod when she arrived. Ama moved through the crowd with practiced confidence, greeting colleagues, answering questions, and keeping her nerves in check. Everything was going perfectly, until the elevator doors opened with a sharp ding. Out stumbled her older brother, Kwame. He was visibly drunk, his shirt half untucked, his smile too wide. People turned to look as his voice cut through the music. "So this is where you've been pretending to be better than us, eh?" he shouted. Ama froze. Her heart dropped. "Kwame, please," she whispered, forcing a smile, trying to lead him away from the crowd. But he jerked his arm free. "You think you're too good for your family now," he sneered. The room went silent. Before Ama could respond, he grabbed a glass of red wine from a passing waiter and, in one reckless motion, threw it in her face. The wine splashed across her white dress. Gasps filled the air. Ama stood still, drenched, shaking, her eyes stinging with humiliation. Mrs. Adebayo stepped forward, her tone icy and calm. "Mr. Kusi," she said, staring directly at him, "you've just made the biggest mistake of your life." No one spoke. Only the soft hum of city traffic below filled the silence as Ama realized nothing about her life would ever be the same again. Ama drove home in silence, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. The city lights of Accra blurred through her tears as the night's humiliation replayed in her mind. The wine, the gasps, the stares. She could still feel the cold liquid dripping down her neck, could still hear Kwame's voice echoing across the rooftop. Her brother, the golden child. The one everyone always forgave. By the time she reached home, her body felt heavy, like all the air had left her. Her mother, Mama Joa, was already waiting on the porch, arms folded tightly. The light above the door flickered as Ama stepped out of the car, hoping, praying, for a hug, a soft word, something. But one look at her mother's face told her she wasn't getting that. "Ma," she started quietly. Her mother's tone was sharp. "So, you went and embarrassed your brother in front of all those people?" "He called me Ama. He said you disrespected him, disrespected your family." Ama blinked, confused. "What?" "He was drunk, Ma. He threw wine at me in front of everyone." But Mame shook her head, disappointment clouding her eye. "He was only trying to protect you. You know how Kwame is when he feels hurt. You shouldn't have provoked him. A good sister keeps peace." Those words hit harder than the wine ever did. Ama stared at her mother, disbelief burning in her chest. All her life, she had been the one to apologize, to patch things up, to stay quiet so Kwame could shine. Every time he messed up, it was Ama who was told to understand him, to forgive, to keep peace. She wanted to scream. Instead, she walked past her mother without another word and locked herself in her room. The mirror above her dresser caught her reflection. Her hair matted, makeup ruined, a faint red stain still visible on her cheek. She reached for a towel, dabbing gently, but the humiliation wouldn't wipe away. Her mind raced with everything she wanted to say, to her mother, to her brother, to everyone who stood there and watched. Her hands clenched into fists. She had spent her whole life trying to be small, trying to please everyone, trying not to be too much. But tonight, something inside her cracked open, not from weakness, but from the quiet anger of a woman who'd finally had enough. She looked herself straight in the eye. Her voice came out low, steady, and sure. "Peace built on humiliation isn't peace," she whispered. For the first time, Ama didn't feel guilty for saying it. She felt powerful. Something in her heart shifted that night. The start of a new kind of fire, one that wouldn't burn out just to keep others warm. The morning sun crept through Ama's curtains, but she didn't feel its warmth. Her stomach twisted as she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. Every second felt heavy. The memory of last night refused to fade. The stares, the whispers, the look on her boss's face. How could she ever show her face at work again? She imagined her colleagues gossiping over coffee, replaying the scene like a drama. Some would pity her, others would laugh. Worst of all, she feared Mrs. Adebayo's disappointment. Ama had worked for years to build a reputation for being calm, professional, and dependable. And in one night, her brother had destroyed it all. Still, she got dressed, her movements slow and stiff. The drive to work felt endless. When she finally arrived, she kept her head down as she walked through the office. Conversations paused. People glanced her way, pretending not to stare. Her chest tightened. Then her phone buzzed. A message popped up on her screen. "Come to my office. Now, Mrs. Adebayo." Ama's heart nearly stopped. For a moment, she thought about pretending she didn't see it. But she knew better. She took a deep breath and made her way down the hallway, her heels clicking softly against the floor. When she entered the office, Mrs. Adebayo was standing by the window, arms crossed. She didn't look angry, just unreadable. She gestured toward a chair. Sit. Amma obeyed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Mrs. Adebayo turned to face her. What your brother did, she began slowly, was not your shame. It's his. Amma looked up, surprised. But, Mrs. Adebayo continued, her voice firm, I don't tolerate weakness in my team. How you handle this will tell me exactly who you are. Amma swallowed hard. The words stung, but something inside her steadied. She sat up straighter and met her boss's gaze. I'm not weak, ma'am, she said quietly. I'm just done being silent. For a moment, there was silence between them, heavy, electric. Then, to Amma's shock, Mrs. Adebayo's expression softened into the smallest smile. Her eyes gleamed with something that looked almost like pride. Good, she said. Then let's make him, and everyone like him, regret underestimating. Amma blinked, unsure what her boss meant. Was this a test? A challenge? Whatever it was, it felt like a spark lighting somewhere deep in her chest. As she left the office, Amma's steps felt lighter than they had in days. She didn't fully understand what Mrs. Adebayo had planned, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let her brother's actions define her. Something was shifting, and for the first time, Amma felt like the story wasn't about her shame anymore. It was about her rise. A few days later, Mrs. Adebayo called Amma back into her office. The mood was different this time, calmer, almost secretive. Papers were spread across the desk, charts and proposals half covered by a steaming cup of tea. Mrs. Adebayo looked up with that same sharp gaze that always seemed to read minds. Amma, she began, tell me something. If you could build something of your own, something that changes lives, what would it be? Amma blinked, caught off guard. I'm not sure, ma'am. I've always wanted to create opportunities for women who don't get the same chances I did. But I've never really thought I could. Mrs. Adebayo smiled slightly. That's what I thought. You have intelligence, resilience, and fire. What you lack is confidence. Let's fix that. She slid a folder across the desk. Inside were detailed plans for a new initiative, a women-led development fund under the company's umbrella. It would invest in small, women-run businesses and train young women in logistics, management, and tech. I'm launching this in 6 months, Mrs. Adebayo said, and I want you to lead it. Amma's heart nearly stopped. Me? Yes, you, her boss replied. You've already proven you can handle pressure. You didn't crumble when your reputation was tested. That's the kind of strength leadership needs. Amma looked down at the folder. The idea was bold and risky. If she succeeded, it could change everything. But if she failed, it wouldn't just ruin her promotion chances. It would end her career. Her mind filled with doubts. What if people still whispered about her? What if no one took her seriously after what happened? Mrs. Adebayo seemed to read her thoughts. Fear is normal, Amma, she said softly. But courage is moving forward anyway. So, will you do it? Amma took a deep breath. The room felt heavy, but something deep inside her stirred. The same spark that had ignited when she decided she was done being silent. She looked her boss straight in the eye. I'll do it, she said firmly. Mrs. Adebayo's lips curved into a proud smile. Good. Then let's begin. That night, as Amma drove home, she felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. The city lights seemed to shine differently, like Accra itself was watching her next move. Meanwhile, gossip spread through town like wildfire. People whispered that Amma got what she deserved, calling the rooftop incident her karma. Kwame fueled the rumors proudly at family gathering, shaking his head with mock sympathy. Maybe now she'll learn her place, he'd say, laughing. What Kwame didn't know was that his sister was quietly building something far bigger than his ego could ever dream of. A project that would not only rebuild her name, but rewrite her entire story. Amma threw herself into work like her life depended on it. Every morning, she was the first to arrive at the office and the last to leave. She studied reports, made calls, met with local business owners, and visited communities across Accra looking for women with potential. Women like the one she used to be, hardworking, overlooked, and underestimated. Her new project, the Phoenix Initiative, started small. Just a few laptops, a borrowed office space, and a handful of young women eager to learn. Amma trained them in logistics, digital tools, and project management, skills that could open real doors. She didn't have much funding yet, but she had passion, and that was enough to get things moving. Soon, her trainees began helping small businesses organize their supply chains and manage online orders. Word spread. Local shops started reaching out. Within months, the Phoenix Initiative wasn't just a project, it was becoming a movement. But not everyone was cheering for it. At a family lunch one Sunday, Kwame leaned back in his chair with a smirk, his gold watch glinting in the light. So, little sis, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, how's your charity project going? Still playing boss lady. Amma smiled politely, cutting into her food. It's going well, thank you. Kwame laughed. You and your charity projects won't last 6 months. People like you always start strong and burn out. Their mother gave a nervous laugh. trying to keep the peace. Amma didn't argue. She had learned that silence was sometimes louder than words. But inside, her resolve hardened. Over the next few months, everything changed. The Phoenix Initiative caught the attention of local media after one of its graduates launched her own logistics startup. Then came an email from an international development organization. They wanted to invest. Soon after, a government ministry reached out, offering a grant to expand operations nationwide. Amma couldn't believe it. The project that everyone doubted was suddenly being praised in newspapers and discussed in business forums. She hired more staff, opened new offices, and built partnerships with global companies looking to support women in tech and logistics. One afternoon, as she reviewed a stack of proposals, Mrs. Adebayo walked into her office with a satisfied smile. "You've done it, Amma," she said. "But do you know what's even sweeter?" Amma looked up curiously. "What?" "The same government grant your project just received," Mrs. Adebayo said, "is the one your brother's company applied for and lost." Amma froze for a moment, then exhaled slowly. She didn't smile, but something about the irony felt like justice. Mrs. Adebayo placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let's see how your brother reacts when the tables turn." Amma nodded quietly, her heart steady. This time, she wasn't chasing approval or revenge. She was building something real. And no one, not even Kwame, could take that away from her. Kwame Kusi was no longer the man who once strutted into rooftop parties with champagne and swagger. His construction firm, Kusi Holdings, was falling apart. Projects were unfinished, investors were pulling out, and debts were piling up faster than he could manage. For the first time in his life, the golden boy of the family was desperate. One morning, sitting in his office surrounded by unpaid bills, Kwame came across a familiar name in a government tender list, the Phoenix Project. The logistics contract attached to it was huge, the kind of deal that could save his company. And at the top of that project was one name that made his stomach twist, Amma Kusi. He stared at the name for a long time, then forced a smile. "Family helping family," he muttered. "She owes me that much." A few days later, Amma's assistant entered her office and said, "Your brother is here to see you." Amma looked up from her laptop, surprised but calm. "Send him in." Kwame walked in wearing his usual charm-like armor, crisp suit, confident grin, fake warmth in his eyes. "Amma, little sis," he said, spreading his arms. "You're looking good. I hear your little project is doing big things. I'm proud of you." Amma leaned back in her chair, studying him. "What do you want, Kwame?" He chuckled. "Come on, can a brother visit his sister?" "Actually," he hesitated, lowering his voice. "I've got a proposal. My company could handle your logistics expansion. We've got experience, and family helping family just makes sense, right?" Amma didn't answer right away. She folded her hands on the desk, her eyes steady on him. "You mean after you humiliated me in front of my colleagues? After you threw wine in my face and called me a pretender?" Kwame shifted in his seat, his charm starting to crack. "You're still on that?" he said with a nervous laugh. "Come on, Amma. Don't be petty. That was ages ago." Amma leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but firm. "I'm not being petty, Kwame. I'm being powerful." For a few seconds, silence filled the room. Kwame blinked, unsure how to respond. He wasn't used to this version of his sister, composed, confident, in control. Finally, Amma slid the folder he had brought back across the desk. "We won't be needing your company's services," she said simply. "Good luck with your next project." Kwame's jaw tightened. "You'll regret this," he snapped, pushing his chair back. Amma smiled faintly. "Maybe, but not as much as you'll regret underestimating." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Amma sat still for a moment, letting out a quiet breath. Her hands no longer trembled the way they once did. She had finally taken back her power, and she wasn't giving it up for anyone, not even her brother. Months later, Accra's skyline glowed under strings of golden lights as people gathered for one of the city's biggest events of the year, the grand launch of the Phoenix Project. The rooftop venue buzzed with excitement. Politicians, business leaders, investors, and media crews filled the space, all eager to celebrate the success of the woman who had turned humiliation into triumph. Amma stood backstage, dressed in a sleek white gown, the same color that had been stained with red wine months ago. Tonight, it was her symbol of rebirth. She took a deep breath as Mrs. Adebayo placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Go show them who you are," her mentor whispered. As Amma stepped onto the stage, applause erupted. Cameras flashed. The woman once laughed at was now being celebrated. She smiled, steady and radiant, and began her speech. "Life will test you," she said, her voice strong but warm. "It will knock you down, sometimes in front of everyone. But the real power isn't in avoiding the fall. It's in how you rise after it." The crowd nodded, hanging on her every word. "The Phoenix Project was born from pain," Amma continued. "But tonight it stands for resilience, respect, and rebuilding. For every woman who's ever been told to stay small, we are done shrinking." Applause thundered through the rooftop. Alma's eyes swept over the crowd, glowing with pride, until she froze. Near the back, by the bar, stood a familiar face. Kwame. He looked thinner, tired, and out of place in a wrinkled suit. His once bright confidence had faded. As people recognized him, whispers began to ripple through the crowd. "Isn't that the man who embarrassed his sister last year?" someone murmured. "Yeah, the one who threw wine at her." Cameras turned in his direction. Kwame's face flushed deep red as the whispers grew louder. People began stepping away from him, their smiles fading. The same public that once adored him was now quietly judging him. Alma watched, her heart heavy. For a second, she remembered the brother who used to walk her to school, who once told her she could do anything. But that boy was long gone, buried under pride and jealousy. Mrs. Adebayo appeared beside her, watching the scene unfold. "Now he knows how it feels to be publicly small," she said softly, her tone cool and deliberate. Alma's eyes stayed on her brother, who now stood alone, shoulders slumped. She sighed, her voice low but firm. "No," she said. "Now he'll learn how it feels to rebuild." The applause swelled again as Alma stepped down from the stage. The cameras followed her, the crowd reached out to greet her, but her mind was elsewhere. This wasn't revenge, it was closure. In that moment, Alma understood that true power wasn't about making someone else feel small. It was about growing so much that no one's cruelty could ever shrink you again. The night of the launch ended in bright lights and applause, but as the crowd thinned out and the music faded, Alma finally allowed herself to breathe. She stepped out onto the quiet terrace, the city of Accra glittering below her. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly proud. She was about to head back inside when she heard someone call softly, "Alma." She turned, and there was Kwame. His suit was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. He looked nothing like the man who once walked into rooms dripping with confidence. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise from the event felt miles away. Kwame's voice broke the silence. "I've lost everything," he said quietly. "My company, my reputation. Even Mame won't take my calls." His voice cracked on the last word, and he rubbed his face as if trying to hide his shame. Alma's heart tightened. This was still her brother, the same boy who used to bring her roasted corn after school, the one who teased her endlessly but always protected her from bullies. But then, flashes of the past flooded her mind. The wine splashing across her face, the laughter, the whispers, the years of being told to keep peace while he caused chaos. Her voice came out steady but cold. "You destroyed yourself, Kwame. I just stopped cleaning your mess." He flinched as if struck. "I know," he whispered. "I was jealous. You were doing everything right, and I hated seeing you succeed when I was failing." His eyes filled with tears. "Please, Alma, help me. I don't know what else to do." Alma looked away, struggling to control her emotions. Part of her wanted to walk away, to let him face the consequences of his arrogance. But another part, the softer part that still loved her brother, couldn't ignore the pain in his voice. Kwame's knees gave out as he sank to the ground in front of her. "Please," he said again, his voice breaking. "I can't do this alone." For a long moment, Alma said nothing. The only sound was the wind brushing against the terrace railing. Finally, she exhaled and spoke quietly. "I'll help you," she said, "but not as your little sister." Kwame looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" She met his eyes, her expression firm but calm. "I'll help you as your new employer." Kwame blinked, stunned. "What?" Alma stepped closer. "You'll work for me now. Maybe that's how you'll learn humility." He stared at her, speechless. The words hung in the air between them, sharp, final, and fair. Alma turned to leave, pausing only once to glance back. "You wanted to teach me a lesson once, Kwame," she said softly. "Now it's your turn to learn one." And with that, she walked back into the glow of her success, leaving her brother to face the weight of his own choices. Weeks after the confrontation on the terrace, Kwame showed up at the Phoenix Project office for his first day of work. His steps were hesitant, his usual swagger gone. He carried himself like a man walking into a world he didn't quite understand, and he was right. Alma met him at the entrance with a calm, professional smile. "Good morning, Kwame," she said simply. "Let's get started." Kwame opened his mouth, as if to protest, but she held up a hand. "You'll start with community outreach," she explained. "You'll oversee site cleanups, help manage field reports, and make sure our teams on the ground are running smoothly. Learn how the work actually happens." Kwame blinked. "Community outreach? That's cleaning." Alma nodded. "Yes. And observing. And supporting. That's the kind of work you never respected before, but it's what keeps this project alive." He huffed and muttered under his breath, feeling the sting of humility. The first week was rough. The girls on the project were polite but focused, and Kwame felt invisible in a way he wasn't used to. Every time he wanted to command, Alma reminded him firmly but fairly that respect was earned, not demanded. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, something began to change. Kwame started listening more, noticing details he used to ignore. He began understanding the impact of the work, how the women he once overlooked were learning skills that could change their lives. He saw the way they looked up to Amma, not because of her authority, but because of her dedication and integrity. One quiet afternoon, he walked into Amma's office without knocking, something he would never have dared before. He paused by the door, then cleared his throat. "Amma, I saw the way those girls look up to you," he said, his voice softer than usual. "You're doing something I never could." Amma looked up from her desk, surprised. "What's that?" she asked. He took a deep breath. "Building people instead of empires." For a moment, the room was still. Amma's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. It had been years since she had seen him humbled in a way that didn't feel forced or bitter. Kwame smiled too, this time without pretense. It wasn't the charming, cocky grin he wore in public. It was quiet, honest, and for the first time shared with her. Amma realized then that the shift in power wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about transformation, in her brother, in herself, and in everyone touched by the Phoenix Project. And in that smile, she saw a new beginning, one built not on fear or humiliation, but on respect and shared purpose. For the first time in years, they stood on the same ground, not as adversaries, but as siblings who had learned that real strength comes from lifting others, not knocking them down. Amma walked through the halls of her company's new headquarters, the sound of her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. Staff members greeted her with smiles, nods, and warm good mornings. There was a sense of energy here, one built on respect, hard work, and shared purpose. She returned their greetings with a quiet pride, feeling the weight of every challenge she had overcome. As she turned a corner, a large mural caught her eye. Bold letters stretched across the wall. "Respect is not demanded. It's earned." She paused for a moment, taking it in. The words felt like a mirror of her journey, from humiliation on a rooftop to leading a project that had transformed lives across Accra. Kwame walked beside her, silent and humbled. His eyes traced the mural as well. After a pause, he spoke softly. "You proved everyone wrong, Amma." Amma shook her head gently, her gaze steady. "No, Kwame," she said, her voice calm but strong. "I just proved that pain can build purpose." They walked together toward the front doors, stepping outside into the warm city air. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the skyline of Accra. The city looked alive, full of possibilities, much like Amma herself. Mrs. Adebayo appeared from behind the glass doors, her expression both proud and thoughtful. "You've come a long way, Amma," she said. "What will you do next?" Amma smiled, feeling a sense of quiet triumph. "Keep building," she replied, "and never let anyone make me small again." The camera would pan out over the skyline, the city stretching into the distance. Lights twinkled across the streets and rooftops, a living symbol of strength, forgiveness, and rebirth, just like Amma. She had faced humiliation, overcome doubt, and transformed not only her own life but the lives of countless others. And now, nothing could stop her from rising higher.